All right, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll get started, and as folks join in, they join in. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Claire Sanderson. I'm with the Arc of Anchorage. This meeting is a forum, a public forum with Anchorage Police Department. We've got Sergeant Kelly Huston and Officer Ruth Adolf with us, and we're so excited for this opportunity to share with the community the knowledge of our great APD team. We approached APD to basically say, hey, what can you do to explain how you guys work with the community in crisis situations? And the Arc of Anchorage itself is an organization that serves people who experience disabilities. So we thought it'd be a great partnership to dive into this topic and what our wonderful men and women in blue do here in town to keep us all safe. And when they approach situations that may escalate, how they deal with it and keep everyone safe. So the Arc of Anchorage welcomes everyone to this. Just to let everyone know, this presentation is being recorded. So that way we will be able to share it later on our YouTube channel. So we will share that, of course, across all of our social media platforms for folks to watch later if they weren't able to catch this live. So please note that it is being recorded. The Arc of Anchorage is a great organization. It's been in Anchorage for 64 years, serving individuals who experience intellectual and developmental disabilities, along with folks who have behavioral and mental health challenges. So we have a wide range of programs and services for people of all ages. And our campus is located at off of Northern Lights between Burgaw and UAA Drive. So it's called Arca Drive. So we have a beautiful campus. We have a great connection with Officer Adolf. She actually used to be one of our board members. So we're so pleased that she's still a great friend of ours, and she's willing to serve on this presentation as the expert in her career field, along with Sergeant Huston. So I'm gonna wrap up my introduction and pass it over to these amazing ladies who are going to share some really great information with everyone. And we will have a question and answer session towards the end. We already have some questions that people have submitted ahead of time. If you have a question for our speakers today, please put it in the chat box, and hopefully we'll have enough time to get to it. And your question should be regarding people who experience disabilities and how the police department, their policies and certain things regarding crisis situations. So please try to keep your questions about that topic. All right, ladies, take it away.
Awesome. So like Claire said, I'm Sergeant Kelly Huston. This is Ruth Adolf. I'm going to have Ruth start out and talk about the CIT program at the Anchorage Police Department, and then that will sort of lead into the CNT, which is the Crisis Negotiation Team, and how we interface with both CIT and the department and the public. What I'm going to do to make this a little easier, because I know this is weird, we're at work and having to still abide by our policies with the masks and social distancing. So while Ruth's talking, I'm going to step out or just step aside so she can take her mask off and actually talk, and people can see her face. And I think that's a little more personable. And then if I need to jump in, we'll just kind of switch or put her mask on if we're going to sit here, if that works for everybody. So I will let Ruth take it from here.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity of having us. And I also wanted to introduce Tanya Vandenbos. She's my partner at work. And I don't know if you, Tanya, if you hear me, can you turn on your video so people can see you? But she's gonna help with this presentation. And there she is. So you will hear from her in just a little bit. So today I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about patrol officers, crisis intervention, and then the co-response team, and then give some tips on how to call the police, what you can do when somebody's in crisis, and what the steps are that you're going to go through basically when you call, from the time you call that to the time that a police officer arrives, and then what potentially follows after that. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So when patrol officers join the academy, they currently get 20 hours of training that are related to behavioral health and mental health. as well as crisis-related topics. One day is completely dedicated to mental health first aid. You may be familiar with that curriculum. It touches a lot on mental health and how to approach somebody that's in a crisis, how to, like, some of the circumstances that a person might go through. And then there's also another day dedicated to basically learning what the resources are in the community, as well as the systems that are in place. There's a lot of empathy building that day. We bring people in that have lived experience. And the amazing thing is that when somebody is not in crisis, the officers can actually ask questions. What helps you in a crisis moment? What can we do better? What have been your experiences? What did maybe a police officer do well? What didn't go so well? Can you help us understand what you're going through when things are not good? And for patrol officers in general, the goal is that we want everybody to be safe. We want the person in crisis to be safe. We want the community members to be safe, and we want the officer to be safe. So safety is huge for us. And that's always going to be the main goal of a police officer. Police officers have very minimal training, and I get 20 hours is maybe not enough. And that's something that we're always going to be advocating for: more training, more resources, more knowledge. That's invaluable for an officer to be good at their job. And so that's something that we're always going to be advocating for. The patrol officers have resources at their just like they know basic things in a community. The most common thing for safety will be taking a person to the hospital, whether that be under a Title 47, which I'm sure you are familiar with, or a voluntary admission at the hospital. We could please go to the next slide. So if you, as a patrol officer, find interest in this kind of work, there's 3 years after you have been on as a patrol officer, there's an opportunity to become a crisis intervention officer, where you have a chance to basically hone your skills, get to learn more in-depth information about mental health issues, developmental disabilities, suicide. There's a lot of neat things packed into this 40-hour training class. And what's amazing about this is that people actually have to apply, and they go through a process to be selected. So the officers that put in for that usually have the drive and the willingness to learn, and they have interest in that work, which makes it a lot better than being told, hey, you're going to this training, whether you like it or not. So the crisis intervention officers are an amazing asset to this department. And their role is to specifically respond to crisis calls related to mental health, suicide, anything along that nature, basically. APD has about 150 trained employees throughout the department. You will see trained dispatchers, call takers, detectives. There's people in the specialty units that are CIT trained as well as on patrol. And recently, APD added 3 full-time CIT officers to better equip the shifts with the specialized response that a CIT officer gives. So we have 1 officer on days, 1 on swings, and 1 on mids. And actually, one of the officers is here today with us in the training, Officer Beatty. Maybe he'll come up here and show his face. But their specific task is to basically respond to the calls that are related to mental health, behavioral health, and crisis. And here he comes. So that's Officer Beatty, and he works mid-shift. Thank you. And then what's also really cool is that we have a co-response team, and that is where a behavioral health counselor, with Tanya Vandenbos and I, we are paired together, and we also respond to calls, and we do a lot of follow-up for the police department on calls for services that officers may have encountered, and then and send to us for follow-up, basically. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is the co-response team, and Tanya will talk a little bit about that.
Hello, I'm Tanya, and I have the privilege of writing with Ruth, which is very nice. Like she was explaining, we get to respond to calls and do follow-up for folks who are experiencing a mental health or behavioral health crisis. And the cool part about that is we get a little bit more time to spend with them as a specialized team. And so where patrol might have a very, they have to kind of respond, make sure the situation is safe and get that person to an immediate solution, right? Which sometimes might mean a hospital or leaving them with family for the night. We get to spend a little bit more time with individuals, figure out what's going on, see maybe a bigger picture and not just what's in the moment, and help connect those individuals to resources in the community. And then again, do follow up with them maybe in another week or a couple of weeks. And sometimes that's a bit more long-term. We have people that we meet with pretty frequently just to keep that connection, to make sure that they stay in services and that they have a positive relationship with the Anchorage Police Department. So that is pretty nice. And I don't actually have access to the slides, so I apologize. I just am looking at Ruth. So I don't know if we need to move slides or not, but I have my behavioral health counselor and sorry, my cat is going to jump into the screen. So again, we get to spend more time, that sidetracked me, with individuals and family. And I think that's an important piece that we get to do, is spend time with family and also connect families to resources, which isn't always something that can be done in a situation, in an emergent situation where, again, it's just, yes, they are always welcome with families. So I think, I don't know if I'm missing anything, Ruth, there.
No, I just wanted to add that, we get there's some really, really awesome connections that we get to make in the community with individuals. And, it's a long-term, a lot of times it takes a long time to get somebody stabilized or successful in the community. We work with a lot of agencies. We work with the guardians, we work with the mental health court, all the therapeutic courts, actually, the nonprofits, and we really try to keep the person successful in the community. And it's been an amazing journey. We've been together for 2 years, and to see the impact that we can make when we have resources that can pull together and work as a team and just have this person's success in mind. It's pretty amazing. It's very humbling. And these people, people remember that. They remember the good interactions with the team, with police officers, and it's really neat to hear that also. Like when we go out and say, hey, we had a call with an officer the other day and it went really well, and they were so kind and passionate and had compassion and empathy, and they took their time, and we really see the value of this work. It's very non-traditional police work, I get it, but it's also very valuable, and it takes a lot of pieces in a community to work together to make our mental health, our system that is really struggling work. And I think there's a lot of people trying to do the best that they can, and APD is trying to do their part by having CIT officers, by having a co-response team, by having the patrol officers go to these calls and figure out the best solution in the moment. And I think we can move on to the next slide. So I just thought maybe it would be helpful to kind of go over what it might be like when you have to call APD. I know, when you're at the point where you have to call, family members have to call the police, or something is not going well, it's a hard decision to make, because there's historically a lot of fear associated, because when the police gets called, you lose control. And I kind of wanted to explain to you what the process is, and how we can elicit maybe help from you as a family member, as a loved one, as a bystander, that might help our situation, that might help the officer understand better. So to start out, obviously 911 versus non-emergencies, it's, there's a difference if you have somebody that's being stabbed compared to, oh, somebody's just in an argument with me because they didn't like the lunch that I cooked today, and now they're in a room and they sit down and everything is okay. So obviously 911 is for super urgent emergencies only. When you're in fear of your safety, when you think somebody might potentially get hurt really bad, they might die, that's when you call 911. 311 is for things like, my neighbor is parking in front of my driveway and I can't leave my house. Or like I said, the disturbances where it's settled, it's calmed down a lot, and it's, something that we can handle in maybe 20, 30 minutes from now. There's always an opportunity to call back. Like if you call 311 and things start escalating after you hang up, and somebody comes out of their room and is totally agitated and throws chairs and punches holes in the walls, and you feel like things are out of control, there's always an opportunity to call back and say, oh, it's escalating now and this is what's happening now. So I wanted you to know that if you call 311 and you think, oh my gosh, it's getting so bad, I should have called 911, there's always chances to mitigate that. But 911 initially should only be for calls where there's serious stuff going on that needs immediate attention right now. So when a person calls, they usually get to talk to a call taker, and they have a protocol. They ask the who, when, where, what, why questions. So be prepared to answer those. The information then gets routed to a dispatcher. They prioritize the call and then dispatch the officer. The officer is responding. They will most likely contact the person that initially called, contact everybody that is involved in this situation. Again, they will ask who, when, where, what, why questions, because they want to find out for themselves what's going on, because a lot of times your calls get called in. Initially, they call in as something completely different than when we actually get there. So don't be offended when the officer asks you again, like, who is this person? What's happened? What's going on? It's just for their own information gathering. And then once they have everything settled and if they figure all this stuff out, they will find a resolution to the issue that we are dealing with at the moment. If we could go to the next slide, please. So maybe some tips on when you call 911 when you request services. We talked about 911 if there's a true emergency, 311 for anything else. You can always ask for a CIT trained call taker if there's a need for one. Of course, if there is not anybody available that's CIT trained, talk to anybody. I mean, they all get basic, especially in dispatch, they get a lot of communication training. They get a lot of, basic stuff in the academy, just like a patrol officer does. So they are very capable of taking your call. You can go to the next slide, please. This is easier said than done, but stay as calm as possible. And when the emotions are high and things are, very chaotic, it's very, very hard to stay calm. But when you're super hyper and super, excited, it's difficult to get information across. So maybe take a deep breath and try to stay as calm as you can. Your name and your address is always going to be asked, and then tell what the situation is that you're faced with. The more information that you can relay, the better it is. Like if there's a person involved that has a disability or a mental health issue or is suicidal, anything that you can give, the more details you can give, the better it is for for the call taker, because they can take down that information and then prioritize based on what you say. They can relay information based on what you say, and they can make a better call. Like, you know, if this is a disability issue or a mental health related issue, they will send a CIT officer. They will try to send a CIT officer. The CIT officer that is on shift, they will look for those calls and respond to those because that's what they're tasked to do. And again, talk about the problem, try to be as detailed as you can. We can go to the next slide, please. You can always ask for a CIT officer. There's never, you know, there's never any wrong in doing so. If there happens to be no one available, or they are busy at the moment, you may have to wait a little bit longer, but dispatch will try to do anything that they can to send a CIT officer to that call. And also very important, if you think that this situation needs more than one or two officers, let the call taker know and state why. Because sometimes there's situations where we do need more than two officers because it's very critical or it's just so escalated that more resources might be helpful. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, again, when we get there, the same thing, you know, try to stay as calm as you can. Try to explain what's going on. If you have information, details about the situation, share that with the officer. Sometimes it's really helpful to know when we go to calls and a family member says, I really, you know, and there was some stuff going on, like maybe the person broke some stuff and it could potentially be a domestic violence related situation, and the family member says, I really need my loved one to go to the hospital instead. There might be some leverage. Like we can call the prosecutor's office, run that situation by them and say, you know, the hospital might be a better solution in that moment. So express what you think the best outcome might be for that loved one or for that person if you know them. It's super helpful if you can introduce the officer to the individual, because that bridges that gap, that makes that connection. A lot of times it's easier when, you know, when somebody that if you're in crisis and somebody you trust introduces you to somebody that's a complete stranger, I think it eliminates a lot of the fear and the anxiety. So that would be really super helpful if in a moment that could happen. Also really helpful is a list of medications, doctors, counselors that person sees. And please keep in mind to let the officers do their job. Like they are there for a reason. They were called because things are out of control, and they're trying to figure out with all this information that they have what the best solution might be with your input potentially. But they still have like a job to do, so allow them to do their job. And when we go to the next slide, I think it talks a little bit about handcuffing. It's very hard to see a loved one or somebody that you really deeply care about get handcuffed. I understand, but it doesn't always mean there's an arrest. It a lot of times just ensures safety, and it ensures that the person maybe has a minute to de-escalate, ensures the safety of the officer and everybody around. So I want you to keep that in mind. Please help the officers when they request it or when it's appropriate. You know the loved one, you know what triggers they have, what hooks they have, what's good for them, what's not good for them. You know, if the officer's struggling, see if you can help them. That would go a long way. I think that would make the situation a lot easier. Case number is always handy. The officer should give you that and a business card with their name on it, potentially. If there is an arrest, keep in mind that the CRP court, and I'm not sure who's familiar with that, but it's a therapeutic court that's available. That might be an option for that individual. It's a more of a wraparound services type court rather than a traditional court system. And also, if a police officer does a good job or a dispatcher, let their supervisor know. I think a lot of times they don't get to hear, you know, if they do a good job. And it's nice to hear every once in a while that what you did today was awesome, or the way you handled this was really good, or thank you for talking with such a low tone and de-escalating the situation. So if you see somebody doing a good job, let their supervisor know. It's huge. It's huge for the officer. Can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, that's it. So here's, I just wanted to give you guys our contact information. Tanya and I are always together Monday through Thursday from 7 to 5 are our working hours, and those are our emails and our cell phone numbers as well. You can text those. And if we can be of assistance, we'd be happy to be there. And thank you for the opportunity.
I'm going to switch gears and talk a little bit about the CNT program, or the crisis negotiation team here at APD. Right now, ironically, this is a training day for us. We do 2 training days a month. So we have 20 hours of specific negotiator training that our team does every month. And so right now, actually, that you can't see in front of me is the rest of the team that is listening to the forum today, which is really cool. So they'll be able to hear what was going on, and in the future maybe be involved as well. We have 14 trained negotiators at APD. That's actually right about the national average for a police department for negotiators. We, in addition to our sworn team members, and that goes from sergeants, obviously, we have detectives, we have patrol officers, we have TFOs, which they work in different, like with the FBI and different teams like that. So we have school resource officers. We have a really great gamut, if you will, of different positional employees here on the team. So while Ruth talked about the day-to-day, officers going to calls, how that's expected to go, the next stage of that is what I would like to talk a little bit more in depth about, which is if it gets to the point where negotiators are called, and what that looks like, and what might be some instances where negotiators would be called as opposed to just a CIT officer to a certain type of call. So while Ruth talked about people can be in crisis, or maybe there was an argument going on or something like that, and they need officers to come defuse that situation, or maybe there was a crime committed and somebody needs to be taken or removed from the area. Negotiators are often called when things have gotten worse than that. We deal with more suicide prevention. And this is even more so than a CIT officer who might respond to a call for service where somebody is feeling suicidal or thinking about it, or they're depressed, or something's going on that's making them think about suicide. The negotiators are more of that person who's made that decision. They've accessed a weapon. They've gone to a bridge. They're somewhere in the midst of a crisis, contemplating suicide right now. So if we don't have negotiators on the street at that time that a dispatcher can send to that specific incident, we will actually call negotiators out to things like that. So oftentimes, if it's suicide prevention, we will send two trained negotiators to that incident to try to help that situation. Oh, there's that PowerPoint looks familiar. Yay. Of course, I've already, we can go to the next slide and I'll try to kind of catch up here. So that's a little bit of history. I talked about how we have 14 negotiators. It was formerly called the Crisis Resolution Unit. Been around since about the 80s. You can go to the next one. Talked about this. We have uniformed and detectives. Oh, that was something I would like to talk about, how we're selected. So while Ruth said that you have to have 3 years, I think she said, to be available or to be eligible to apply to be a CIT officer, it's the same as a negotiator. And so The difference is the CIT officers are selected. They go through what we call an oral board, which if you can imagine a bunch of sergeants and lieutenants and high-ranking police employees sitting around asking that person questions, and then they answer. Those are usually an hour long. They're pretty in-depth. Everybody is scored, and then the highest scored people are selected. So after that process is finished, for negotiators, we are then required to go through a psychological exam. So we do about I'd say it's 4 to 6 hours of a written psychological exam, and then an interview with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to go over that test. And then you have to obviously pass that. And this is the same test that officers take to get hired initially. We go through this again. Things change. Our SWAT team members also go through a psychological exam to get selected as SWAT team members. And most of them are CIT trained as well. And some of them are even negotiator trained. I talked about our 20 hours of mandatory training every month. After selection for our team, we do an initial 40-hour basic school. So same as CIT, except our negotiators are already CIT trained. So they have already been selected prior to applying as negotiators to CIT. They've been through that training. If by chance they have not, we put them through CIT training at some point, in addition to the 40-hour basic course for negotiators. And that's put on by the FBI here in Anchorage. And we help, as a team, we help teach that 40-hour course. Oftentimes we have advanced courses. There's a CNT2 course, which is another 40 hours that we try to get our team members to. And then obviously continuing training every month, where we're doing scenario-based training. We're learning about active listening and different things that are what we call our core competencies, and what we want to, how we want to function at the level we want to function at, which is very high. We have to practice those things on a monthly basis, if not a daily basis, in our normal jobs. I say our day jobs. We even have members on standby all the time. So on their weekends, they're on a call out type standby basis, so that we always have negotiators available. One thing I want to make note is that oftentimes if people are involved in NIXL, you know what NIXL is, and you get these NIXL alerts saying SWAT is in the area of whatever, or there's a large police presence in this area, stay away from there or be aware of it. When our SWAT team gets called to a scene, everyone can assume something has gone pretty bad there. Either the person is barricaded, there's weapons involved, there's a violent felony that has occurred. What people don't know is that every time our SWAT team is called to a scene, our negotiators are called. So 4 negotiators will always respond with SWAT. They are a simultaneous unit, if you will, although they're very separate in our goals and what we train to do. We are deployed to critical incidents together. You can go to the next slide. So those are the main reasons and the roles of the crisis negotiation team. Barricaded suspects or subjects. So someone has barricaded themselves either in their residence, someone else's residence, a business, a car, obviously hostage taking, suicide intervention that I talked about, and then mentally disturbed persons where there's immediate threat of injury to themselves or others. Next. And that's just listing the same thing. You can go to the next one. Obviously, we negotiate for these reasons. Our main goal is to protect human life. We, as a team, we joke that when we're having a good time at a call out where we're doing really what we train to do, SWAT's sitting there doing nothing. And that's what we'd prefer them to do. Sit there, protect us, keep everybody safe, let us do the talking, and hopefully it resolves that situation without having to use any kind of tactical measures at all. We want to, and we will sometimes do those things like talk and listen for hours and hours and hours at a time before we decide to do anything else that has anything to do with SWAT, because like it says in the slide there, we're gaining time. We're preparing for tactical applications and resolutions, but at the same time, our goal is to keep that from getting to that point and try to convince that person that the right thing to do is to come out and talk to the police. Next. I won't read those long definitions. I think everyone probably knows what a barricaded person would be. That's straight from APD's policy about what a barricaded suspect is. So next. Hostage, obviously anybody that sees kidnapped or otherwise unlawfully restrained by another person. So obviously that's going to be a situation where negotiators are called out if there's hostages, and then our main focus is going to be that hostage and getting those people, that person or people released safely. Next. So we have, I mentioned that when we do a call out, or there is a call out to a critical incident, we have 4 negotiators that respond. The next few slides talk about the roles of what those negotiators do, and because they do have very specific roles. It's not like 4 of us are talking to a person at the same time. We have a primary negotiator. That's the person who is going to be talking to that person, directly to the person. The secondary negotiator, or we sometimes call a coach, or we just call it a second, because that's quicker, is the person sitting next to the primary negotiator, maybe feeding them information. They're taking notes, they're providing suggestions, or they're if that person's giving a timeline, or I'm going to do this at this time if you don't leave or something. That person is making note of that and then passing that on to our command staff and the SWAT team members so they understand what's going on. Next. So the coordinator, team leader, supervisor, that's generally going to be a sergeant. If a sergeant is on the team at the time, there's several sergeants on the team right now. So myself and Sergeant Crane are the current team leaders. So one of us will always be on a call out, and our main job is to interface between the negotiators and wherever they're at. We have a van that we do a lot of our negotiations in, or it might just be a police car at that time. And then the incident commander was going to be the SWAT lieutenant, which is Lieutenant Wilson right now, Brian Wilson. And so we're doing a lot of transferring information that the negotiators are receiving about the incident to the incident commander so that they know exactly what's going on. And oftentimes that information is immediate because I have couple different cell phones going. I'm listening to the negotiation if I'm in a different location, so I'm immediately able to provide that information to the SWAT commander and the SWAT team leaders. Next. And the 4th role is the intelligence officer, or the intel officer. This person is going to be the negotiator who is talking to family members, talking to loved ones, talking to witnesses, and then providing as much information as they possibly can gather to the primary or secondary negotiator so that that information can be used to help further the peaceful outcome. So it might be that this person in the crisis has a dog, and it's a 15-year-old dog, and it's their best friend, and here's the dog's name, and the dog's in the house. Well, now the negotiator might have something to use to build rapport with. So that kind of information for the public, for the loved ones, is very important for us because we're trying to find ways to build rapport with this person, to try to convince them, generally talking on the phone where they can't see us like this, that they can trust what we're saying and that we are going to keep our promises and we're not going to throw them to the ground and hurt them. And we're talking through and we're being very honest about what's going to happen when they come out and surrender and what that plan looks like. And oftentimes, I'd say more often than not, we are doing that entire surrender on the phone. We will have that person's even put the phone in their pocket so they can hear that person that they've been in contact with for could be 6-7 hours. And that's the person they've come to trust and listen to. And so they don't want to lose that connection. So oftentimes we'll say, just stick your phone in your pocket, or we'll let the SWAT officers know you're going to have it in your hand and you hold it up, or whatever it's going to be that works out so that they don't lose that connection with us. And next. So obviously our goal is safety. And I used the same PowerPoint presentation that I use to teach new patrol officers what negotiators do, because I think it's relevant. It's relevant to the public. It's relevant to officers. It's pretty basic. The main reason we send 4 negotiators is because that's a lot of jobs to do, as you just heard. And oftentimes we are in a face-to-face situation. So while it's safe to be in a vehicle and on the phone talking to someone, sometimes there's an open door to an apartment and we're actually having face-to-face interaction with this person who might be armed, might have access to weapons, whether that's knives or firearms, or making threats to hurt themselves. And so then that becomes a very serious officer safety issue. And it's imperative that our second negotiator then becomes that primary negotiator's kind of safety net to make sure that they're doing everything safe, and that while they're trying to build rapport with this person, that they're paying attention to any kind of hazards that may come up. Okay, next. And this is more for us, just reminders that we need to maintain good cover and be safe. You can go to the next one. These are the different kinds of methods of communication. Oftentimes it's going to be a cell phone. And we all know that most everybody has a cell phone, and that's going to be our general way that we communicate with people. We do have the ability to shut off someone's cell phone service to a point so they can only accept incoming calls, different things. We can shut off their internet service or the Wi-Fi, things like that to help us maintain contact with them. Next. These are a lot of things that we're going to ask. I'm Kelly with the police department. What happened today? Are you okay? Who's with you? Can you talk to me? Do you have weapons? Is anybody hurt? I don't want anybody to get hurt. We ask very specific questions regarding suicide. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Or are you thinking about hurting yourself? We make that very obvious that that's the question and the information we want to find out. Next. So these are kind of the do's and don'ts. The biggest one on this one is I want to emphasize we are honest with these people. We are not telling them, oh, nope, you're going to come out, you're not going to get handcuffed, and nope, you're not going to jail. We are 100% honest, because oftentimes we will meet these people again, or they will have contact with police later, and we want them to remember the incident and their communication with us, that we were honest and that we said we did what we said we were going to do or not do. And next. Other just information we're generally going to ask people. You can go to the next one. One thing I want to, the biggest thing from this slide I want to let people know is we all understand as a team that every family member, loved one, best friend, sister, whatever it is, thinks that they're going to be able to convince that person to surrender or come out of the house or the car. Chances are we are not going to put somebody else on the phone to talk to that person, though. And there's lots of reasons for that. I won't get into all of it right now, but we are going to do the talking with that person. We want to be the lifeline for that person. And if we put somebody else on the phone, we can't control what's being said. So don't take it personally. We want to get all that information that we can use to talk to that person, but we're not going to put you on the phone. You can go to the next one. And these are just, we're not making promises. We're not dismissing things. If they want bottles of water, we do our best to try to do that. If they want $1 million, that's not going to happen. And we tell them that too. Again, we're going to be honest with them about their requests. Next. Safety priorities, hostages, bystanders, police, and the suspect. So those are, that's right out of our policy for negotiators. You can go to the next one. So there's all of our team members. What I didn't mention, or who I didn't mention, is we actually have 3 trained chaplains on our team that go through all the training that we go through, the 40 hours plus any additional training we do. They also are involved every single month in our training. They are an amazing asset. We love them. And so they're listed there on the bottom, and they're in addition to the 14 team members that we have at APD as our 3 chaplains there. And that's about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is a lot of information, and I appreciate you and Tanya and Ruth for providing all this amazing information for everyone. I'm going to go ahead. We've got a lot of questions. People were definitely jumping in to the chat room, and I just want to share a message that our CEO Barb Rath shared in the chat box, because I know that you were doing the presentation. She just said, "Thank you so much, ADP team. We really appreciate all of you and the hard work you do to keep our community safe. In addition, it is amazing to know that our police force recognizes that there are complex layers involved when interacting with people. Having specialized approaches and interventions related to disabilities, mental and behavioral situations means a lot to community providers like the ARC. So thank you for supporting our ongoing partnership in today's training and presentation." Thank you very much. That's from our CEO, Barb. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into the questions, and we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. If your question did not get answered, we will try to follow up with you. We will tag team with our speakers to get those questions answered and get back to you. Okay, so the first question is, what approach do you use when you arrive to a potential crisis situation and you are not sure if someone has a developmental disability?
I think Ruth can jump in too, is I think our officers are trained. I think our officers are trained better than any officers in the state. And I know I'm biased, and not even the state, I mean the country, to recognize those things, to ask questions, to talk to neighbors, to talk to the person who called the police, because maybe there's someone who sees this person walking along the, that way to work or somewhere every day, and they've just noticed. So I think recognizing the signs, asking the right questions, talking to that person, and I think Ruth can agree. We teach our officers to ask things like, do you take medications for anything? Do you have any diagnoses? What are some of the challenges that you face every day? And just by getting to know that person and asking questions, I'd say pretty darn near 10 out of 10 times, we can solicit that information from either them or a neighbor or loved one or someone that called, or maybe they're even providing us with a name or a phone number of a counselor or a payee or something like that we can call and get that information from. Ruth?
Sergeant's spot on, and our calls, they usually start with, "Hi, my name is Ruth. How can I help you today? What's going on today?" And you just try to elicit information from the person, and just by asking questions. And officers, they may not know exactly what the disability is, and I don't think that's reasonable for us to expect them to know. But as you ask questions like, what agencies are you working with? Where do you live? Like she said, like, what do you take any types of medications? Do they help? Do they not help? I think you can gather enough information to know, to get a good picture of what's going on, what the person is dealing with themselves, and then kind of go from there and make it, try to figure out a solution.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Earlier this month, there was an article about the STAR, the Support Team Assisted Response Program in Denver. Mental health clinicians and paramedics have been successfully used to respond to low-level incidents and mental health episodes. Not only has the program had a positive outcome for those contacted by the STAR team, but the Denver police chief also says it will save money and allow his officers more time to focus on police work. Has APD study programs like STAR, and might we see them implemented in Anchorage anytime soon?
I'm going to do this.
So many of you might know that the fire department is spearheading a program that's going to be designed to do exactly that. It's a paramedic linked with a clinician, and they're trying to build out their team to include peers and social workers and all kinds of other members that will go out into the community. This is something that's brand new, that it's starting right now, and it's still in the planning phases. So that's coming. Crisis Now, maybe something that many of you have heard. The Mental Health Trust is heading that up. It's basically a stabilization center where people can be taken to when they need a break, when they just need a minute to sit and take a breather, and then kind of get connected to services from there. And then again, the police department, I would say it's Tanya and I, that's kind of the match to what fire is doing right now. So that's what's happening in Anchorage. And there's a lot of really neat things happening right now.
That's so good to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Ruth. Next question. What kind of preemptive communication with your unit should or can legal guardians pursue if we know an individual will require your services?
Does that mean like what communication can happen before, or how do we get engaged? I guess.
Yeah, it's like, if a situation is coming, something is escalating, and we need somebody who is a legal guardian, or possibly even a support staff or whatever, knows something is happening. What can they say and share with your unit to know if that really, if it needs to be a 311 call versus a 911 call, that sort of thing?
So I guess if this person feels so threatened, like their life is threatened right now, and it's like somebody is like punching walls, holes in the wall, and it's getting, or they're threatening the staff, and they're making active like attempts to come at somebody. Like, it's really hard because I can't say like, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, and then do that. But in a big picture, if you feel like the situation is so escalated that it's, the outcome is going to be, it's dangerous, or your life is being kind of at stake, you're scared, it should be a 911 call. No question about that. If it's an argument where you like my guy said earlier, the person maybe didn't like the lunch that they were served today, and they got really upset with you and said, I don't like what you just served me today. And it starts getting kind of like this back and forth, and the person ends up going to their room. It's definitely not a 911. Doesn't meet the requirements of 911. 911 is, you need the police here now, like, or stuff is really about to go bad. As far as communication with us, I mean, when you call, if you can provide information that's helpful for the officer, whatever you would want the officer to know, if you can relay that to the call taker, they have the opportunity to put this into the computer, and the officer can read it, follow up on that, and they may ask you that same question when they get on scene again. But if you can provide information that's helpful to the officer, that can help them get a better understanding of what's going on. Like, for example, I don't know, let's talk about, my daughter has autism, and she's having a really bad day, and she just got assigned a new case manager, and the change is really hard for her. So she's escalating today, and she's just really aggressive. And like, if you can provide stuff like that, I think that's really, really helpful for the officers to know. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that did. Thank you.
And Tanya might have something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one of the very cool things about having a co-response and the connection with community partners is that some of this can be done prior to a day when they're in crisis. So as family and friends and members of the community, and even part of their care team, sometimes we can see when things are escalating. We can see when things in the person's life is maybe not going well, and it could result in a really bad day in the future. And so we do have a lot of those teams and families reach out to us before there's a need to call 311 or 911 to just do check-ins with them, see if there's anything we can do to stop that from happening. And so outside of just what happens with patrol when they're already having a really bad day, sometimes we can step in before that if it's somebody that we have a relationship with, have already built rapport, or we can just start building that rapport to kind of to help that so that doesn't get to that point.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's why I gave out our email address and our cell phone numbers. I mean, we, you know, if there's concerns or you see an escalating behavior or you feel lost or you just simply want to run something by somebody, we are always available. Like we would love to hear from you, and we would love to see how we can help problem solve to prevent, you know, the future escalation and to be more proactive. I mean, that's going to be our goal. Our goal is always going to be to keep the person in the community, keep that person with the family if possible, like in their environment where they feel safe and they're happy, and that's always going to be our main goal. And if we can be proactive and accomplish that, that's huge for us.
I love that. I love that, Ruth. That's the prevention is really key. I really love that. Thanks for sharing that. Next question is, what are the hours of the CIT team? In the past, I know there was an incident, but was told that it was past the operating hours for the CIT to come out. I think things have changed since then.
Yes.
Obviously.
So we have CIT officers that are assigned to patrol, like, you know, the 150 trained employees that we have at APD. A certain portion of those are assigned to patrol. So they're going to work, and I can't tell you what shifts they work because it changes so frequently, but there should be CIT officers on every shift. They do, a lot of them are, well, they are assigned to patrol as their main duty. However, with the 3 recent addition of full-time CIT officers, that we have a pretty good coverage throughout the week where their CIT should be available. So, and then Tanya and I, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 5. And then mid shift usually starts at 11 till 9 in the morning. Swing shift is from 3 to 1, and day shift is 7 to 5. So throughout those hours, we have a pretty good coverage with CIT officers on.
That's great. And I think, you know, just like you guys mentioned earlier, the 150 now trained officers, there's always going to be someone, so that's great.
Yeah, and not all of them are officers, because there's also within APD, people move, right? They go to detectives, so they're not going to be on a street necessarily, but overall, it's 150 people. So
that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, 2 more questions to go, and then we'll wrap this up. I know folks have things going on today, and I know you guys are busy as well, so we definitely value your time here. So the next question is, are CIT officers often called in domestic violence situations?
Yes, absolutely. And that may be just an example of a family member, son parent situation or daughter parent situation. You know, certain things make it domestic violence automatically, and it's just by the mere fact that it's a parent and a daughter or a son, people living together. So there's certain factors that automatically make it DV. So yes, we get called to a lot of DV related situations, but like I mentioned earlier, depending on what the situation is, we have a little bit of flexibility because we can run stuff by the prosecutor's office and explain the situation, take into account what the family members tell us. And, you know, in a situation where it's best to take somebody maybe to the hospital to get stabilized, if that's what it is, then we might be able to consider that. But again, I don't want to promise. It's depending on the case, what the situation is in the moment, but definitely CIT officers go to a lot of DV related calls. Yes.
Thank you. Last question, and if anyone had an additional question they didn't get to ask today, feel free to send that to us here at the ARC. You can use our email address. I'll put it in the chat box. You can send it to us at a later time and we can pass it on to our experts here and they can respond. Last question, can you explain more about what Title 47 is and what officers must do while protecting the rights of a person in crisis with the rules under Title 47?
So Title 47 is essentially the statute that gives us authority to take somebody into custody against their will. We do have to meet certain criteria in order to make that happen. The person has to be gravely disabled. They have to be suicidal or homicidal. So these are the three factors we need to be able to articulate in order to take somebody to the hospital against their will, essentially. Title 47 is something that is very powerful, and not everybody has, the authority to do that. So it's police officers and psychiatrists, psychologists that have the ability to do Title 47 committals. And that's basically when we take somebody to the hospital, they have to stay there. They can't just walk out. They have to be evaluated by a clinician and a doctor, and they have to be deemed safe to go home and stable. And then, so basically they're held there until that happens, and then they can go home or go wherever they need to go. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that, and there was a question about that. So we just wanted to make sure that that was clear to people that APD has to follow the law, that sort of thing. And there's reasons behind the protocol that APD has, and for people to understand that and acknowledge that. Thank you, ladies, so much. You guys are amazing, and everybody at APD. We just really want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to address this particular issue that a lot of folks have been wondering about. If my family member who experiences a disability or mental health challenge, behavioral health challenge, how am I going to be treated by APD? And what we've learned today and what you guys have gone through with us really shows that you guys are at the forefront nationwide, really getting officers trained, having professionals behind the scenes, really making sure that our community stays safe. And just want to thank you so much. And if you had anything else you wanted to share with the group, feel free to just blurt it out. We just really appreciate you both. You guys are just amazing, and just kudos to all that you do, and know that we appreciate you and we respect the work that you do here in our community.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Let me add one more thing about Title 47, just so it was clear. The criteria that Ruth mentioned, all of those don't have to be met, just one of them. So gravely disabled, or likely to harm themselves, or likely to harm somebody else. So they don't all have to be met, just one of them. And then the hospital stay can be up to 72 hours. So I just want people to know that there is a chance that the hospital staff, once we take someone to a Title 47 facility, that they could be there for up to 72 hours.
Thank you again so much. Thank you everyone who hopped on the Zoom meeting. We will, again, just to remind everyone, this is recorded. So what we'll do is we'll put this up on our YouTube channel. We'll also share it across Facebook and all other social media platforms. So if you know somebody wasn't able to join us today, you can forward them the link. And just again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, APD. You guys are amazing. And again, happy Thursday, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.